This is J. Krishnamurti's fourth public talk in New Delhi, 1966.
I believe this is the last talk, at least for this year. There is no end in collecting ideas, in multiplying words, gathering knowledge and information. But to act seems to be one of the most difficult things to do. To act sanely, healthily, without any conflict with a certain quality of mind. A mind that is not tortured, that is not distorted by conditioning, by the environment in which one lives, by all the strains and stresses that human beings are heir to. Apparently, it's much more easy to discuss ideas, theories, rather than to live a rich, full day without any problem, without a disturbance, without the misery and sorrow. It seems to be one of the most difficult things in life to live totally, not fragmentarily, but as a total human being. Whether you're in your office, in your home, or whether you're walking in a wood, to live completely, non-fragmentarily. It's only the complete action that is of that brings about intelligence. Total action is intelligence. But we live in fragments. As a family man, opposed to the rest of the world, as a religious, if one is at all religious, in a peculiar theories, ideas, separate beliefs and dogmas. And one is always struggling to achieve a status, a position, a prestige, either that status be worldly or saintly. One is always striving. There is never a moment when the mind is so completely empty and therefore silent, and out of that silence action takes place. Because we are no longer original. We are the result, as we have said over and over again, of our environment, of the circumstances, the culture, the tradition in which we live. And we accept that. And to change all this demands a great deal of energy. You know, it's very easy to discuss ideas. That doesn't demand much energy. Theories, quoting somebody or other. That doesn't demand much energy, interest, drive. But what demands energy is that to bring about a total revolution in oneself, that demands tremendous energy. And to have that energy, man has tried several things. He became a monk, shutting out the world, all the temptations of the world, withdrawing, isolating himself from the world. But inwardly he was still tortured. Inwardly he was still burning, but with his desires, with his ideas, opinions, what somebody has said or not. So outwardly you may withdraw, but inwardly there is always conflict, a striving. So this strife, this struggle makes energy, wastes energy. So the question is, one must have tremendous energy to change. That's very obvious. Even to stop smoking, if you are so inclined, you must give certain energy to observe why you smoke, what are the process of it, and so on. That demands certain energy to give it up, as it demanded certain energy to get into the habit of smoking. Perhaps it demands greater energy to give it up. But to understand this whole process of living, which is very complex, though we live very superficially, outwardly may perhaps lead a very simple life, but inwardly, inside the skin as it were, we are very complex human beings. The motives, the ambitions, the griefs, the frustrations, the fears, the competition, and the ever-lasting fear and sorrow. That is going on inwardly. Now, to bring about a radical transformation in all that demands a great energy, which is obvious. Now, is it possible to have this energy without any conflict? Because we have considered the gathering of energy through effort. The more effort you make, one thinks there is more energy. Isn't it? Please, as we said, don't merely, if I may request you, don't merely listen to words or to the ideas. Listen with your heart and mind, neither taking sides, opposing, or offering your own particular opinion. Just listen. The speaker is doing all the work when he talks. All that you have to do is to listen. And if you know how to listen, then you're also working with the speaker. But if you're merely listening, hearing words and translating those words into opinions, or opposing those words with your own ideas, or comparing those words with what has been said by previous teachers and so on and on and on, then you are not sharing. Then you are wasting your energy. Whereas if one could listen, as you would listen to a bird in the morning, to listen to all the various notes, neither rejecting it nor opposing it, but just listen with an intensity, with an affection, with a tremendous enjoyment. Because it's only when we listen with our heart and mind totally, then that very listening is an end in itself. Then you don't have to do anything, because then the seed has taken place, and the seed, if it is vital, will bring its own fruit. But if one merely opposes because you are a Sikh or a Hindu or a Muslim and God knows what else, or you are tortured by a particular problem and you want that particular problem resolved, then you are listening with a fragmentary mind, listening partially. This partial listening, this inattention, is the very essence of waste of energy. Either you listen completely or don't listen at all. Either you pay complete attention to your sorrow, all the things involved in it, the loneliness, the lack of companionship, the frustration, the misery, the endless annoyance, and all that's implied in sorrow. Give your whole attention to it. And you will not give your attention to it if you want your sorrow to be solved in a particular way, according to a particular pattern. Then that demand that you should be solved in a particular way is a waste of energy. But whereas if you listen with care, watching every movement of thought, never stopping it, watching it with great minute attention, then you will see for yourself that the problem which loomed large no longer matters at all. Because that very attention is energy which resolves the problem. Because we are going this evening, if we may, we're going to consider the gathering of this energy to tackle all the human problems. Because we have many problems, not a single problem. And every problem is related to another problem. If one can solve one problem completely, doesn't matter what it is, solve it completely, then you will see that you can be able to meet other problems easily and dissolve them. It is inattention that breeds mischief, not attention. And to know when you are inattentive is to be attentive. You understand? To know I am lazy, to be aware I am lazy, is already to be active. But not to be aware that I am lazy, not to be aware that I am inattentive, then begins the mischief, the misery, the problem. Do listen to this, please, because it's your life. You are daily anxiety, your daily misery, your daily conflict, the insults, all that your daily misery we are talking about. And to resolve that, not partially, but totally, demands great energy. And we are going to find out this evening if we can communicate to each other this energy. And to communicate about anything, there must be contact. You understand? To communicate about any problem, there must be contact with the word. And the meaning of the word. And not translate the word as you wish it to be. Which means when there is communication, both the people must be in a state of attention. Mustn't it? If I'm telling you something, you must be attentive, you must be interested, you must care. But if you are not attentive, if you are merely waiting to be stimulated, or waiting to be told what to do, then communication ceases. Because we are not going to tell you what to do. Because for generations upon generations, you have been told what to do. Your teachers, your gurus, your politicians, your books and everything have told you what to do, what to think. Not how to think, but what to think. And that pattern, that tradition has been established. And you're waiting to be told what to do. But we are not concerned with such triviality about what you should or should not do. That will come to you when you give attention. Then you will find out for yourself, out of your own mind, out of your own heart. So we are going to consider this evening the gathering of this energy. This energy that is not generated through stimulation. Please listen to all this carefully. Most of us depend on stimulation. Either you take hashish, LSD, or this or that, on stimulation. There are different forms of stimulation, both the outward and inward. The outward we know, which are fairly simple. A ritual, a repetition of a phrase, reading a book, a depending on something external, which gives one a certain stimulation. Or you derive stimulation through your desire, through your pleasure, through an idea which is very stimulating. But we are talking of an energy which is not dependent on stimulation. Because the moment you are dependent on something, you are already wasting your energy. Oh, you understand all this? Most of us depend. We must depend on food, clothes and shelter, that's obvious. Don't let's mix the two. You must have food. You must have clothes. You must have shelter. We depend on the postman, the milkman, the railway, or the bureaucracy, and so on and so on. We depend. But we also depend on others inwardly. Inwardly, we are desperately lonely. And out of the fear of that loneliness, of that emptiness inwardly, we depend on people. The people then become the stimulus. And the moment there is a stimulant, whether it is a psychological stimulant or an outward stimulant, that stimulant dulls the mind. You understand? When you drink coffee, tea, or alcohol, keep on drinking it. You will need more and more and more, which makes the mind more and more dull, not sensitive, alert, awake. So if one realizes that any form of outward or inward stimulation breeds inevitably a sort of indifference and dullness, when you see the truth of it, you will naturally, the stimulation naturally will drop away. You are understanding this thing, sirs? Because in that there is no conflict. It's the conflict that wastes energy. So look, our life is a conflict. From the days of the school, where we compete with another boy to better marks, examination, college, university, and then a job, getting a better job, competing with another, arriving at a certain position, certain status, and demanding more status, and so on. It's from the beginning to the end, we are perpetually in conflict, striving. Emotionally, as well as intellectually. And this effort, like all effort, which is friction, it doesn't make the mind subtle, function freely. Every effort is a distortion. I hope you're following all this. It's only when effort ceases that you have energy, an unbounding energy inwardly, so that your mind remains crystal clear, so that it can tackle any problem, any human problem. So, for this energy to come into being totally, one must understand effort. Not say, ask the speaker, how am I to live without effort? That would be too silly. Because then if I were to say, foolish enough to tell you how to do it, then you would try and follow that system, and in the very following of that system you are making an effort. And therefore destroying the very thing that you want to bring about. But if you understand the nature and the structure of effort, then you will have energy to do the problem or do what you have to do much more efficiently. You understand, sirs? Look, the world is divided socially. The high, the middle, and the low. Isn't it? The high have all the prestige, the position, the wealth, the power. And they want to hold it. Like what is happening in this country. One political party has got the power, position, prestige, or not, and wants to hold it. And is going to make tremendous effort to hold it. The middle wants to come to the top and push them away. Right? This is what's happening, sir. This is called revolution. And the middle becomes the high and holds on to power. Till again the middle comes and pushes them away. This pattern is repeated over and over and over again. Now, man in society is seeking prestige, status through function. Right? You make a tremendous difference between the Prime Minister and the court. Right? No? Not only outwardly, but psychologically, inwardly. To you, status matters much more than the function. Because with the function, you have identified status. And hence, when status becomes so tremendously important as it does throughout the world, then function becomes less and less inefficient. Then you are not attentive to function. Your eye is on the status. Right? So conflict between function and status, the struggle to achieve status through the function becomes the purpose of existence. This is what is actually taking place. And hence, we are all the time increasing conflict. The saints do this, only in their own way. They want to achieve heaven, break a record of fasting or burning themselves, all stuff. And to them, status matters very much. Not what actually they are. How petty, how silly human beings are. And so, to bring about a change in the shallow mind, because most of us are very shallow, petty little minds we have, whether it is the saint or the chief minister or God knows who else. We've got very small minds, petty, shallow little minds. And these minds are everlastingly making effort to be something different. You follow all this? But the moment you are attentive to your shallow mind, to be aware that you are shallow, narrow, limited, petty, moment you are aware of that, you will see in that state of attention you are no longer petty. If once you understand this principle, understand it, not repeat it, not quote it, what the speaker is saying endlessly, that's no importance at all. The speaker is not at all important. What is important is what you listen and see if it is true and carry it out with all your heart and mind. So, we need energy. And that energy is wasted when there is conflict. Please listen very carefully. Listen to what is going to be said. Conflict will continue as long as you are seeking pleasure. Because most of us want pleasure. That's the thing we live by. Sexual pleasure, appetite of various kinds, pleasure that you derive from a status, position, prestige, out of your capacity, out of your knowledge, pleasure. And pleasure arises, comes into being, put together through thought. That's fairly simple, isn't it? Thought creates pleasure. I think about something that has given me pleasure for a moment. I think about it, and the more I think about it, the more I give strength to that pleasure. It's fairly simple, sir, how pleasure begins. And as long as the mind is seeking pleasure, there is always fear of not having it. And as long as there is fear, there is effort to run away from it, to resolve it, to do something which is a waste of energy. You understand? To see the structure, the meaning of pleasure, just to understand it, not intellectually. Now, wait a minute. There is so much to be said, and so little time. You know, the word understanding is so misused. We say, I understand intellectually, which is sheer nonsense. You don't understand anything intellectually. What you mean when you say I understand intellectually is I understand the words that you are using, and I understand the meaning of those words, but not the content of the whole thing. You can only understand something totally when you are listening to it silently and completely. You understand? This happens to all of us. You understand something completely when you're quiet. Out of silence there is understanding, not out of your chattering. So, to understand the nature of pleasure, the structure, how it begins very unexpectedly, very slowly, without your knowing. You see a beautiful sunset, a lovely face, or some kind of sexual or other experience, and you wanted to repeat it. The repetition is a process of thinking about it. And the more you repeat, the more mechanical. You can go every evening to look at the sunset, but you'll never see it, because out of that sunset you are deriving a pleasure. You're not looking at the sunset. You want the pleasure which that sunset gave you 2 days ago. So, as long as there is any demand for pleasure, there must be conflict. But we are not talking of puritanical banishment of pleasure. On the contrary, if you understand the whole structure of pleasure, then you will have tremendous joy in life. Because joy is entirely different from pleasure. You cannot think about joy, but you can think about pleasure. Right? You have noticed. So, one has to understand not only effort, but the whole meaning and the significance of pleasure. Not cut away pleasure, which monks have tried in their monasteries. In the sannyasi will never look at a woman because he's so frightened, and so on and on and on. Because to them, pleasure is something very wrong. They consider it sin. And therefore they destroyed the vitality of understanding. Because they have said this is wrong. They never examined the whole structure of pleasure. So one has to understand not only effort, but also pleasure. Because in pleasure there is fear. And therefore pain. You understand? Where there is the search for pleasure, there is fear. And it's this fear that creates pain. So if you are willing to put up with pleasure, with fear and pain, go to it. But know all the implications of it. Don't just slip into it. But if you give your whole attention to it, then you will find that you can look at a sunset and not let pleasure creep in, which means thought, wanting the repetition of it. Therefore, when you look at a sunset or at a face or anything, at a bird or the beauty of water, a sheet of water shimmering in the sun, when you look at it, that is without thought. Therein that there is tremendous joy. Therefore there is no pain, no fear. And therefore, end to effort. And we also make an effort when we are trying to become something. Schoolboy is trying to become, pass an examination. He's becoming, he's making an effort. This is not the occasion to talk about the whole business of education, but we won't touch it for the moment. Inwardly, we want to be something. I do not know if you have noticed ever in yourself how you are craving to be somebody, famous, full of knowledge, all the things that one imagines. Why do we do this? Why do we want to be somebody? Why do we want to be the hero, like somebody else? You understand, sir? Most of you do. Why? Again, one has to understand this. Because inwardly, we are empty. We are shallow human beings. Shoddy little human beings. I do not know if you have ever seen a horse galloping at full strength, and a little man is riding on top of it. The horse is much more graceful, more beauty, full of power and enjoyment. And the man who owns that horse, and the man who owns it is a very small man with a little mind, frightened. And that's what we are. We want to be outwardly something, but inwardly we are utterly empty, full of memories, full of knowledge, which are the past, which are dead ashes of something which we have lived or remembered or experienced. And because we are empty. We are frightened of that, and therefore we are trying everlastingly to become something. But if we gave complete attention to that emptiness, not trying to alter it, not trying to say, well, I must feel it, I must do something about it. When you are completely attentive of that emptiness, you will see you can go beyond it. And then there is no attempt to be anything. Then you will know what it is to be without a demand, without, then it is a light to itself. So, we waste energy through constant effort of different kinds inwardly. Of course, I must, wait, look at it. Most of us are indolent, lazy. And we are always trying not to be lazy. I discipline someone disciplines to get up at a certain time every day, punctually. Makes tremendous effort. Because he's lazy in himself. But he doesn't inquire why he is lazy. You understand? He's concentrated on being not lazy, therefore he never looks at the structure and the meaning of laziness. Why is one lazy? Probably you have not eaten rightly. You have done too much. You have walked too much, talked too much, done so many things. And naturally the body, when it gets up in the morning, is lazy because you have not spent an intelligent day. Do listen to this, please. You have not spent an intelligent day, and therefore the body is tired the next day, and there's no good disciplining that body. Whereas if you are attentive at the moment of your talking, when you are in your office, be completely attentive, even for 5 minutes, that's enough. When you are eating, not to eat fast and stuff yourself with all kinds of food. Be attentive, then you will see that your body then becomes of itself intelligent. You don't have to force it to be intelligent. It becomes intelligent, and that intelligence will tell it to get up or not to get up. So you begin to discover that one can live a life of going to the office and all the rest of it without this constant battle. Because your mind, because it is not wasted energy, is using it totally all the time. And that is meditation. You understand? Meditation, not as it is done all the world over, repetition of words, sitting in a certain posture, breathing in a certain way, repeating some shloka or mantram over and over and over and over. And naturally that makes the mind stupid, dull, and out of that stupid, dull mind it becomes silent, and you think you have got silence. Then that kind of meditation is merely self-hypnosis. It's not meditation at all. It's the most destructive way of meditating. But there is a meditation which demands that you attend to what you are saying to your wife, to your husband, to your children, how you talk, if you have servant, how you talk to them, to your boss, attentive at that moment. Not concentration, because concentration is something which is very ugly. Every schoolboy can do it, because he is forced to do it. And you think you by forcing yourself to concentrate you will get somewhere. You won't. You will not have what you call peace of mind. You will have a peace of mind which is not peace of mind. Concentration is an exclusion. You are excluding, you are resisting, you are putting away things which you don't want when you want to concentrate on something. Whereas if you are attentive, then you can look at every thought, every movement. There is no such thing as distraction. Then you can meditate. Then such meditation is a marvelous thing, because it brings clarity. Meditation is clarity. Meditation then is silence. In that silence, that very silence is the disciplining process of life. Please listen to all this. Not you are disciplining in order to achieve silence, but when you are attentive to every word, to every gesture, to all the thing you are saying, feeling, your motive, be attentive, not correcting. Then out of that comes silence. And from that silence there is discipline. Then in that there is no effort. There is a movement which is not of time at all. And such a human being is a joyous person. He does not create enmity. He does not bring unhappiness. There are some questions which have been handed. Perhaps you would ask first before I answered this question. What, sir? Who should rule the world? Philosopher or a politician? I hope neither. No, sir, don't laugh. You see, you don't see the implication when you laugh so quickly. Why should anybody rule the world? They have made the politician and the philosopher such a howling mess. Why should they rule you? Why don't you rule yourself? Huh? Why do you want somebody else to rule you? For God's sake, what are we, monkeys? Why should anybody tell you what to do? You know what's going to happen? The computers are going to take over, not the philosophers, not the politicians. Their day will soon be over, I hope. But the computers, who are completely impersonal, what to do, they'll tell you. You know, I was told during the Korean War, the computers decided whether to attack China or not. Not the generals. The computers decided. They knew the strength of both and said, don't do it. The computers are corrupt, cannot be corrupt, made corrupt. But the politician and the philosopher can be. and are. So what is important is not whether the world is governed by them, but whether you can govern yourself. Then you don't want governments. Please do this. Govern yourself. And that is one of the most difficult things, because then to govern yourself you have to know yourself. Not invent that you are Atman and this and that and all the rest of childish nonsense, but you have to learn about yourself. You have to look at yourself. As you look at your face in a mirror, without distortion, you have to look at yourself. The way you talk, the way you walk, the way you say, the way you think, everything, look at yourself. Then out of that attention, out of that looking, you will know how to act. And then you will know how to govern yourself, and therefore then man need not have any government at all. You know, one of the communist theories was the end of government. But there is no going to be end of government, because they want a certain pattern repeated, certain ideology. And moment the high hold the power, they were not going to let go. So a wise man, a man who is really humble, who has great affection and love, doesn't want anybody to guide him or to rule him.
Is it possible to communicate the joy, and is it possible to have the joy?
Is it possible to communicate joy, and is it possible to have it? Is it possible to have joy and to communicate it to others? You see, first of all, to understand what joy is, you must understand what pleasure is. That's what I've been talking about a little earlier. When there is joy, why do you want to communicate it? What for? To tell somebody that you have got it? You put it in a book, in a poem, in a painting? See, we are so concerned to communicate when we have nothing to communicate. When you are full of something, you are not bothered then whether you communicate or not communicate. Right, sir?
I have two questions, sir. One is on love and the other is on meditation. So I formulate my question on love. Love, according to your concept, the reply you gave yesterday, is a state of mind which is brought to silence. It is not an emotion. My question is, sir, would you qualify that quantity, that love about which you have been talking, and while explaining this, also tell us if you know of any individual who so suddenly mutated himself into that state about which you have been talking. That's the question on love. And the other is on meditation. Meditation, as we have defined today, is complete attention. Now the word, whatsoever we may reject authority or accept authority, the fact is the word meditation has been used. Then Buddhists do it. If the Raj Yogis do it,
Sir, brief, sir.
Sir, let me finish it. If the concept of your meditation is attention, why bring in words which exactly have been used by so many other people and not use the word attention itself? Then we'll understand.
Right, sir. Gentlemen ask, would you define what love is? And also he suggests that I should not use the word meditation because it's heavily loaded. But I should use the word attention. All right. But I don't think words matter very much if one knows the meaning of words. If you can brush aside the weight, the load which that word meditation has been given, then that one can use that word meditation as well as attention. And we are not defining. Dictionary will give you a very good definition of what meditation, what attention, what love is. Is that what we are talking about? Define? Have a formula what love is? With that formula you can go and compare what Shankara, Buddha, X, Y, Z said, and at the end of it, will you know what love is? And will you then love? So, dialectically or through explanation, will you know what love is? So how do you come by love? Not according to my concept. We have been saying right through this talk, no concept. That concepts are the result of thought which have put together concepts, formulas. The man who lives by formulas is a dead human being. And that's what's happened in this country. You've got dozens of formulas, according to Shankara, Buddha, and God knows what else. And where are you? So, we are not talking of concepts. We said, love is not pleasure. Right? Love is not desire. Love is not jealousy. Love is not possession, domination. If you can eliminate these, then you'll find out. But without eliminating these, and eliminating them rightly, not in forcing them, then you'll find out for yourself what kindliness is, what courtesy is, what is gentleness, and then perhaps you will come upon this strange flower which man wants, hungers after.
The problem of relationship we were discussing the other day. Sir, you are face to face with two persons, idea. Both hold themselves to be right. And you have to put up with them. How the problem of relationship is taken care.
If you have to put up with a person who thinks he is right, the question asks, what relationship have you with that person? A person who insists he is right, obviously, is a neurotic person. And what relationship have you with an unbalanced person who says, I'm right about everything? So, first you make a problem. You don't examine the question of those people who say, I am right. You know, sir, truth is something entirely different from being right. Truth is something which is not personal. It's nothing to do with any religion, with any group, with any individual. It is not to be found in any church, in any organized religion. And right and wrong are things of thought. And without understanding the whole machinery of thought, merely to submit to another who thinks he is right, like these gentlemen who are going to burn themselves about nothing, they consider themselves tremendously right. And they are going to create havoc, mischief, which has nothing to do with truth. To find that strange thing, one must be free. And to be free means to be without fear. Fear, without fear, to investigate, to look, to observe. Right, sir. Wait, sir. I got one. Here. Look, sir.
There is some conscious effort involved in being attentive to one does.
Must not one make conscious effort to be attentive?
No, is not some conscious effort involved in being attentive to one does.
Is not some kind of effort necessary in being attentive to what one does? First of all, as most of us are trained, educated, to do something which we don't like at all, right? Most of us have gone to the office for the next 40 years, and you don't like it. It's a horrible business. Endlessly getting up every morning and trotting to the office. It's a rat race, and you're forced to do it. So, what does one do? Look at it. What does one do? I hear somebody tell me, don't make effort. It has no meaning. And he explains the nature of it. I think I have grasped the meaning of it. And here I am, next morning, I have to do something which I don't like. What am I to do? Right? I either put up with it and do the very best possible there, or I walk out. I cannot walk out because I'm married. I have children, I have a responsibility. So I'm stuck there. So, being stuck there, what happens? I moan. There's self-pity. I compare myself with somebody who has got a better job. I am all the time grumbling about it. Don't. There it is. I've got a bad leg. No doctor can cure it. There it is. I put up with it. I don't everlastingly complain. Now, the way I put up with it demands attention. Whether I put up with it because I understand the whole meaning of it, therefore it's no longer a problem. But if I resent it, if I'm incapable of dealing with it, and I want to deal it in a certain way because I want this and that, then I multiply the problem through self-pity, through comparison, through various forms of ambition. So if I'm aware of all that, then I put up with it and go beyond it. There is a question, sir.
One simple question. The question is, what place has altruism in defining human life?
What place has altruism in life? You mean altruism, unselfishness? Unselfishness, doing social work? Is that it, sir? Yes, sir. What place has unselfishness in life? Right? Is that it? What do you think? Why do you ask me? When it becomes an ideal that I must be unselfish in order to save somebody, then it is no longer unselfish. When you give up when you do social work, because it's an escape from yourself. You understand? Because you are miserable, you are frustrated, of which you may not be conscious. Just go and do social work, help vast number of people. Then that leads to mischief. Because reformation needs always further reformation. Not a total revolution never needs reformation. It's only these little petty little saints with their petty little issues and problems and resolutions and plans and altruism. They are the mischief makers. Whereas when there is a total understanding of the whole process of life, and out of that comes a mutation, then that is beyond these words of altruism and social work and all the rest of it. So I've got one question, that will be the last, if you don't mind. What, sir?
Employees and employers relations everywhere, that is governments or public or private undertakings, they are undergoing a great deal of restriction.
Yes, sir. Employer, and the difference between the employer and the employed, the divergence, the division between them is growing greater and greater, right?
And their relations are undergoing a lot of conflict.
And their relationship between these two, of course.
Can there be an understanding between the two ever?
Sir, you know, the nationalization, look, this is not my job talking about all this. Sometimes succeeds, sometimes doesn't. It's been shown right to the world. And they have experimented in Russia, in China, in different parts of the totalitarian states where there are dictatorship, where there are no strikes and the state is the employer, you know, all that stuff. And the difference between the state, which is the managerial party, the top dogs, the high people, and the low people is equally different, is wide, and there is a constant battle between the two. The capitalists have done this too. Only there, the worker can buy shares in the capital. Shares. He can join the company. You know all that. So, what is involved in this, sir? There is work that has to be done, labor. Labor is going to be done more and more by automation. Great factories can be run, and probably will be run, by half a dozen people. And that is going to come. And the labor will have nothing to do. You and I will be lazy. You and I will have leisure. And then the problem is relationship between man and man in leisure, not in function. Relationship becomes conflict when there is status and not function. This is simple, sir. When the employer seeks status and so on, everything in life becomes a conflict. So the problem is, we cannot deal with problems in the immediate. We must take the problem, as we pointed out earlier in the talks, in the total process of time. Man is going to have leisure, great deal of leisure. And what is he going to do? That is the real issue which you have got to face when you are treating employer and the employed. So, leisure is going to be exploited by the entertainer. Whether the entertainer is the television, radio, football, or the priest, or the sectarian leader, or the political party, and so on, so on. So, leisure becomes a very important issue. Whether you are going to be completely be entertained always, or are you going to enter into a different world where we become human beings, not kept entertained by circus and bread? You understand? Whether we become true human beings, then we shall have right relationship with the employer and the unemployed, or the employed. Till then we'll always have conflict. Right, sir, that's enough, sir, please. There is a question which... Do you want me to answer this question? Because it's nearly 7 o'clock. The questioner says he is shy to ask this question, therefore he has written it. I am very sexually inclined. Education, culture, music, literature have just slightly modified it. But basically, it is deep-rooted. I suffer a lot from this. What is one to do? You have understood the question? The questioner says, music, art, literature, and so on have slightly modified the central issue, which is the drive, the urge, the demand for sex. You know, it's one of the most complicated problems, like every human problem, that is deviling the world. You understand? It's right through the world this problem exists. Why? It is as though for the first time human beings have discovered sex. Right? You understand? As though something very strange thing, and they want to have complete enjoyment of it, and making a tremendous issue about it. Why? Now let's examine it. I am not telling you what to do. That would be so utterly immature, childish, and will reduce you to be immature and childish too. So we're going to examine the thing. To examine, you must be free to look. You understand? So you can't have prejudices. You can't say, oh, sex is sinful. Sex must be controlled, this and that. So to look, you must be free from your prejudice and opinion. Not only with regard to this, but with regard to every issue in life. With regard to your politician, with regard to the scientist, with regard to your newspapers, with regard to your sacred books. Everything to observe, to learn, there must be freedom. Now, why has it become a problem? Huh? Are you listening to me, sirs? Are you waiting for me to tell you? Yes? Why? Why has it become a problem to you? That I don't know how many there are. You can't all of you answer at once. So please don't. Why has it become a problem? Look, first of all, intellectually, you function within a pattern, right? Intellectually, you have drawn a line, a boundary, and within that you function. And that boundary, the space is very small. Right? You daren't question your leaders, political, religious, intellectually. You don't doubt. You don't say, what do you mean by this? You have accepted them as authority and function intellectually in that little frame. Right? Therefore, what has happened? You have blocked yourself off, haven't you? Right? Intellectually, you have cut yourself off. You have cut away. You daren't think freely. Not that there is any free thinking, there is no such thing, but intellectually you are crippled. Right? Look what's happened through the world, say, here in this country. Art, music, literature is at its very lowest ebb. Because you have accepted tradition and you repeat. So intellectually you have made yourself small, narrow. So you have no release through intellect, right? Release. Not through fulfillment, I don't mean that. To think clearly. Not to be afraid. To say what you want to say. Even though society may threaten you to put in prison or burn you, to stand by what you think. And that you don't do. Have you noticed, sir? These people, these holy men, Shankaracharya and this gentleman in Punjab, are burning themselves. Over what? Over some trivial matter. But then not one of the people in this country burned themselves when there was a war between Pakistan and you. Though you professed pacifism, though you professed non-violence, but you never stood up and burnt yourself, never fasted. So intellectually you are dead. Right? This is a fact. You may function a little bit, learn new technology, become a marvelous administrator, marvelous engineer, but that is not active. That's merely repetition. So intellectually you have cut the flow of the mind. Right? So, then emotionally what has happened? You know, to be sensitive, to be alive to trees, to poverty, to dirt, to squalor. You don't even notice all that. Right? To beauty, sir. You understand? To look at the stars, to feel the leaf, to look at the poverty, to see a poor child with fat tummy. You don't look, you don't feel, you don't cry. You have become callous. And this is right through the world, not only here. And when you do feel, you become sentimental. You become devotional to some idiotic picture or a statue. You rush to temple when you've got a headache. Give your jewels, give all that. So, emotionally too, you are starved, empty. Physically, look at yourselves, what we have made of ourselves. Overeating, overindulging, not having enough exercise and all the rest of it. Physically one has become flabby. So when you shut off the movement of the mind, when you throttle down, destroy, become callous, inwardly, emotionally, to have no feeling, no consideration, no kindliness. You talk about it, but you never stand for it. You never treat your servants, your children. So what happens? You have only one thing left, which is sex. And nothing else. And that you have indulged, though all your saints have said, don't look at a woman, and she's a disease, she's your sister, she's your mother, she's illusion, you know, all the tricks you play with it. But yet you go on with this thing that becomes a terrific problem. Because all round you have become insensitive. Please see this out for yourself, then you will do something. Then it will be no longer a problem. And also at that moment probably you are not, there is a total absence of yourself. And you want that repetition of that state of mind when there is no worry, no problem, when you are totally unaware of yourself. That's what sex gives you for that time being, and then you're back again to your turmoil. So when you shut off all the movement of life, all affection, all kindliness, consideration, looking at nature, looking at trees, flowers, thinking clearly, when you have none of those things, you have only one thing left. Like the peasant in the village, what has he? He has nothing. No beauty but work, and the everlasting sunshine, burning his body and his soul away. What has he left? He has got one thing left, sex. Therefore he has dozens of children. That's his only pleasure. And that too you deny him. That too you deny through your sacred books. Because they see all these examples of these shallow, empty sannyasis who have run away from life. So to renounce the world is to understand the world, not to run away from it. To understand it you must look, you must see very clearly. And when you see clearly, you love. And when there is no love in your heart, as you have no love in your heart at all, you may talk about it. When you have no love in your heart, you have only one thing left, which is pleasure. And that pleasure is sex. And therefore it becomes a mountainous problem. So to resolve it, to understand it, begins to free the mind. Don't be afraid. You're human beings, not driven cattle. Then out of that freedom comes a beauty in everything, and nothing becomes a problem.